told you that the person who consistently leaves their wet towel on the bedroom floor is actually holding the secret to saving the universe.
I mean, that sounds like a wild excuse for not doing laundry.
Right. But seriously, picture this. You open the kitchen drawer to grab a knife, and right there, sitting with just absolute confidence in the knife slot, is a fork.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Or, maybe you open the closet. You're fully expecting to see these neat, precise, color-coordinated stacks of T-shirts, but instead you are just staring at a jumbled basket of unfolded laundry.
We have all been there. It's so frustrating.
Exactly. You just stand there staring at it, and you can practically feel your blood pressure spike.
Yeah, it is the universal, completely unavoidable domestic glitch in the Matrix. And, well, usually that moment of staring is the exact flashpoint where the frustration just bubbles over and a massive argument begins.
Let's be real, it almost always ends in a fight.
Oh.
Which is actually why today's deep dive is taking those minor, everyday domestic annoyances and unpacking them from an entirely different perspective.
I am really excited about this one.
Me too. So we are diving into a really compelling set of notes and an article published on a site called Thought Tapestries. And it takes that misplaced fork and literally connects it to quantum mechanics, ancient philosophy, and something the author describes as God physics.
Yeah, God physics. The central source material we are exploring today is a blog post titled The Gravity of Silverware.
Such a great title.
It really is. And it functions as this profound thought experiment. It establishes that the universe, at its absolute core, is hard-coded with a relentless tension between two distinct archetypes.
Okay, so a tension between two opposites.
Right, and the core argument being presented is that the messy archetype, like the one leaving the fork in the wrong spot, is actually a fundamental requirement for keeping any system from just grinding to a sterile halt.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp this concept without just sounding like we are making excuses for messy roommates, we need to clearly define the specific characters in this framework. So the author was literally standing in his kitchen, looking at this robe fork in the knife slot, and he had this realization.
The light bulb moment.
Exactly. He realized this wasn't his partner exhibiting like a malicious lack of discipline. It was actually a clash of fundamentally different operational styles.
Right. So the source material lays out two distinct forces or archetypes at play in reality. The first one is called the transmitter.
The transmitter.
Yeah, and depending on the context, you can also think of them as the operator, the optimized, or the high-capacity individual.
So this is the person maintaining the perfectly folded T-shirts and color-coding their inbox.
That is their natural resting state.
Right.
The transmitter deeply values spatial syntax.
Spatial syntax.
Yeah, they crave coherence, predictability, and localized order. To the mind of a transmitter, the silverware drawer isn't just a box of metal. It is a flawless piece of code.
Wow. Treating a drawer like software code.
Exactly. The underlying logic driving them is that order drastically reduces friction, and less friction saves energy. You don't have to pause, rummage around, and look for a fork. You just reach your hand out blindly and grab it.
Because it's exactly where it's supposed to be.
Right. It is a system built entirely on optimization.
Okay, but on the other side of the kitchen island, you have the partner. The one humming a tune while making a totally chaotic cup of coffee, leaving all the cabinet doors wide open.
Yes, the other half of the equation.
This person is defined in the framework as the dissipator, or the constrained. And the text makes a very specific point here, which I think is crucial. They do not do this to annoy the transmitter.
It's not on purpose.
Exactly. They just lack the discipline or maybe the tools or even the specific internal wiring required to follow the rigid, exacting technique of the transmitter.
Yeah, their internal energy simply isn't stored in rigid folding techniques or, perfectly sorting stainless steel.
Right.
Because their energy cannot be channeled into that specific predetermined track, it dissipates. It just scatters out into their environment.
That makes me think of how we manage our smartphones. Like, the transmitter is like a highly efficient smartphone running permanently on an optimized battery-saving mode.
Oh, that is a great analogy.
Thanks. Yeah, like every single app is perfectly categorized into designated folders. Background app refresh is strictly disabled. The screen brightness is manually regulated. It is a machine built for endurance and absolute predictability.
Yeah, and following that logic, the dissipator would be the phone with 50 different applications running simultaneously in the background.
Just absolutely draining the battery.
Exactly, blooming battery life. But it is also doing a million unpredictable things at once. It is ready to jump from a complex video game to a navigation map to a group text thread in a fraction of a second.
So it's hyper-responsive, but messy.
Right. The transmitter runs on closed, highly efficient loops. But the dissipator bleeds energy out into the surrounding environment, creating this messy but highly reactive state.
So the smartphone analogy makes perfect sense when we're talking about couples sitting on a couch. But you mentioned earlier that the author scales this concept all the way up to God physics.
I did.
And I am really struggling to see how a messy kitchen drawer or a drained phone battery scales up to the mechanics of the literal universe.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the foundational physics of symmetry and charge.
Okay.
So ancient dualistic philosophies like yin and yang are often treated as these abstract, purely spiritual concepts, right?
Yeah, like something you'd hear in a yoga class.
Exactly. But in this thought experiment, they're recognized as being mathematically hard-coded into the physical reality of our universe. The universe is deeply, unavoidably committed to pairs.
Just completely built on dualism.
Yes. Look at matter and antimatter. It is the ultimate cosmic duet. For every single fundamental particle in existence, there is an antiparticle holding the exact opposite charge.
Oh, wow. Or electromagnetism. You have positive and negative charges binding atoms together to create literally everything we can touch, see, and breathe.
Exactly.
One simply cannot exist without the conceptual and physical counterpart of the other.
And the implications get even more profound when the source material brings in quantum entanglement.
Oh, boy. Quantum mechanics. Here we go.
Stay with me.
Yeah.
In quantum mechanics, two particles can act as an inseparable, unified whole, regardless of the physical distance between them.
So they're connected, even miles apart.
Or light years apart.
Mm-hmm.
If you measure one particle and it resolves to a state of spinning up, which we could align with the active, organized energy of yang, its distant, entangled partner instantly resolves to spinning down.
The yin, the receptive, chaotic energy.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter if they are separated by 3 inches on a kitchen counter or by 3 million light years in deep space, they behave as a single coordinated system.
Wait, so when your partner spins up into total chaotic tornado messiness in the living room, you are fundamentally entangled to instantly spin down into ultra-organized, hyper-focused cleaning mode?
Yes.
You are both just behaving as a single quantum system trying to find a baseline. That is wild.
It is a phenomenal way to apply the physics to the domestic reality. Because the universe isn't a static painting. It is constantly sloshing back and forth between these opposing states.
Sloshing back and forth.
Yeah, the source refers to this as the constant flux. Think of a swinging pendulum. At the very peak of its arc, it hangs in absolute stillness. It holds pure potential energy, that is yin.
Okay.
Then it swings. At the very bottom, the lowest point of the arc, it is pure kinetic energy, pure motion. That is yang.
And the author also uses the life cycle of a star to illustrate this, which is obviously a massive scale.
Huge. A star is essentially an eternal, violent wrestling match. You have the outward, explosive pressure of nuclear fusion.
The yang.
Right, fighting constantly against the inward, collapsing, organizing pull of gravity, the yin. The core argument here is that this dualism is not a mistake.
It's intentional.
The universe simply does not run on uniformity. Its entire engine is powered by the tension between opposites.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to push back on this logically for a second.
Sure, go for it.
If the universe fundamentally requires perfect balance, like if nuclear fusion literally needs the crushing weight of gravity just to avoid blowing itself apart, why do we humans almost always view the transmitter, the organized gravity-like one, as completely superior to the messy dissipator?
That is the million-dollar question.
I mean, in our society, we celebrate the perfectly organized drawer. We do not celebrate the jumbled t-shirt basket. We give out promotions and awards for efficiency, not for entropy.
And that societal assumption is precisely what leads to the brilliant inversion at the heart of this entire thought experiment. Yes. Perfection, as we culturally define it, is actually a trap. In fields like data science, machine learning, and evolutionary biology, there is a very real phenomenon known as the over-optimization trap, or hitting local maxima.
The over-optimization trap. I think I've heard the term, but how does that actually play out in this scenario?
Well, imagine you are climbing a landscape blindfolded, and your only goal is to keep stepping upward.
Okay, blindfolded on a hike? Sounds dangerous.
A little bit. Eventually, you reach the top of a small hill. Every direction you step goes down, so you stop. assuming you've conquered the world.
Right, because you can't go up anymore.
That small hill is a local maxima. You are completely blind to the fact that there is a massive, towering mountain right next to you, because to reach it, you would first have to walk downward into the Mezzi Valley.
Ah, I see. So the transmitter gets stuck on the small hill of their own efficiency.
Exactly. They become so flawlessly tuned to a specific environment or a specific set of rules that it creates extreme specialization. And extreme specialization inherently breeds rigidity.
They get stuck in their ways.
The transmitter becomes incapable of seeing outside their own successful technique because, to their mind, the problem of the kitchen drawer is already solved.
The blindfold is basically their own success.
Right. That incredible efficiency creates a massive blind spot. If the world were populated exclusively by transmitters, it would be a sterile, rigid place where nothing new ever grows, because nothing ever deviates from the established, optimized code.
Here's where it gets really interesting then. Because the dissipator, who seems like the broken or inefficient component in our normal human logic, actually holds the hidden genius of the entire system.
They really do.
They are the ones willing to walk down into the messy valley to find the bigger mountain.
Well, they're forced to.
Mm-hmm.
Because the dissipator lacks the strict internal tools or the discipline to stay on the rigid track. They live in a state of structural chaos, which physicists call entropy.
Right, entropy, the breakdown of order.
But as the grander scope of physics and information theory, entropy isn't just breakdown, decay, or messiness. Entropy is the realm of infinite possibility.
The realm of infinite possibility. I like that. The author actually describes them as operating in a state of arbitrary generation.
Yes, arbitrary generation.
Since they are not bound by the supposedly right or efficient way to do things, they are forced to wander into completely uncharted territory. Like, they stumble upon novel shortcuts by pure accident.
Give me an example.
Well, like, they might randomly leave a fork in the knife slot, grab it the next morning, and realize, hey, actually, grabbing a fork from this specific angle is way faster for how I whisk eggs for breakfast.
Exactly. They introduce fluid, raw creativity into a closed system. They stumble upon entirely new dimensions of a problem that the transmitter's rigid, blindfolded efficiency would completely bypass.
Which means we're looking at a necessary, incredibly delicate symbiosis here. The transmitter provides the stable framework that keeps the system from flying apart into a million pieces.
They are the gravity keeping the solar system in a safe orbit.
Yeah. But the dissipator brings the raw, chaotic creativity that keeps the system from stagnating, freezing, and eventually dying out.
And that is the exact cosmic balance the source material is trying to illuminate through the lens of a kitchen drawer.
Okay, I love the theory. I really do. But that brings up a massive logistical problem for anyone actually living with another human being.
I think I know where you're going with this.
If these two forces are so diametrically opposed, one needing rigid tracks to function, and the other constantly breaking those tracks just by existing, how do they coexist without destroying each other?
It's a fair question.
Because let's be real, in a normal kitchen, this friction usually just ends in a screaming match about who does more chores.
To answer the how, the author pivots pretty hard and introduces ancient wisdom. Specifically, texts from the book of Romans, Romans 14.1 and 15.1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The text states, "We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves." It also includes a very specific warning against quarreling over disputable matters.
So we are taking this from quantum physics and local maxima straight into theology and morality.
We are. And the author brilliantly merges them through a concept called relational gravity. Let's look back at classical physics for a moment. A massive celestial body, like a sun, doesn't just sit there in space.
Right, it bends everything around it.
Exactly. Its sheer mass physically warps space-time, creating a deep gravitational well that catches smaller objects and holds them in a stable orbit, protecting them from flying off into the dark void.
Okay, I'm with you.
In this moral physics, strength isn't a tool for dominance, superiority, or nagging. It is structural support.
Oh, that makes so much sense. The word bear in that text, bearing the failings, isn't about like putting up with someone while rolling your eyes.
Not at all.
It is literally about load bearing. The strong bear the weak in the exact same way a load-bearing wall holds up a roof, or a sun bears the planets in its orbit.
Yes. And that leads to the concept of acceptance acting as a cosmic lubricant or a shock absorber. Think about any mechanical system. When two mismatched metal components grind against each other without a buffer or oil, what happens?
You get intense friction. That friction generates a massive amount of heat, and eventually you get complete mechanical failure. the engine just blows.
Exactly. In this human framework, accepting the other person's nature is the shock absorber. If the transmitter complains and nags about the fork in the wrong slot, that heat, that quarreling over a disputable matter dissipates relational energy.
It just wastes the energy of the relationship.
Right. It burns up the fuel that could have been used for something productive, creative, or beautiful within the relationship.
Which brings us to the part of the article that honestly blew me away. The author brings in non-equilibrium thermodynamics to explain the actual mechanism of how this works.
I know, it sounds like a lot.
It sounds incredibly intimidating. But when you break it down, it perfectly explains how couples cool down that engine.
It really does. It introduces the idea of grace acting as a literal thermodynamic force. In physics, power or mass naturally flows from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration in order to stabilize a grander system.
Like how heat naturally flows into cold spaces.
Exactly. High-pressure weather systems move into low-pressure zones.
So if friction causes the engine to blow, non-equilibrium thermodynamics is the mechanism that cools it down.
What's fascinating here is the transmitter doesn't accept the fork in the wrong slot out of pity. They don't do it because they feel morally superior.
They aren't just being martyrs.
Right. They do it out of absolute systemic necessity to maintain the balance of the relationship. It is the physics of staying together. The transmitter has a high concentration of order. The dissipator has a low concentration.
Right.
By quietly fixing the fork without a lecture, the transmitter's order naturally flows into the dissipator's chaos. It cools the entire system down without demanding the cold become hot.
Wow. That is a massive, incredibly heavy concept.
Right.
We have journeyed from silverware to cosmic balance, quantum entanglement, machine learning blind spots, non-equilibrium thermodynamics, and theology.
It's quite the trip.
But the author didn't just hand us a dense textbook of raw equations and Greek philosophy to help us figure out our marriages, you know? He gave us a story about a guy standing in his kitchen, annoyed by a fork.
Which highlights the final crucial piece of this thought experiment, the physics of storytelling itself.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
The source points out that a complex metaphysical topic like raw math or abstract theology is essentially like raw, unshielded electricity.
Unshielded electricity, okay.
If you hand that directly to someone in an argument, it usually bounces right off their defensive walls. Or worse, it completely fries their circuit. The receiving system dissipates the information because it simply lacks the capacity to process that much raw voltage in that format.
I mean, think about the power lines outside your house. If you run a wire from a massive high-voltage transmission tower directly into your living room television, the TV doesn't turn on and show you a clearer picture.
Definitely not.
It explodes.
Exactly. But a relatable story like the gravity of silverware acts as a step-down transformer on a power pole. It takes that massive, lethal high-voltage current and reduces it to a safe, manageable level that can actually power the appliances in your house.
But how does the story actually do that to the human brain? Like, how does it lower our resistance?
By bypassing the ego and the analytical defenses.
Ah, the ego.
Yeah. When you present someone with raw data, facts, or a lecture on why they are wrong, their brain instantly goes into a defensive posture. They start looking for counterarguments.
They just dig their heels in.
Exactly. But when you tell a story about a guy frustrated by a fork, the listener drops their guard. They nod along, they find it relatable, and while their analytical brain is relaxed, the core truth of the story slips right past their defenses.
So it acts as a Trojan horse of meaning.
Precisely. The story is a highly efficient physical container that carries the heavy weight of cosmic truth effortlessly into the listener's mind.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, I want you to think about how you communicate your own complex ideas.
This is the practical application.
Yeah. Whether you are at work pitching a massive structural change to your team, or you are at home trying to explain to your partner why you desperately need more help with the daily chores. Are you just handing people raw, unshielded electricity?
Giving them the spreadsheet.
Right. Are you giving them the raw data, the spreadsheets, the bulleted list of their faults, and expecting them to just take the full voltage? Or are you taking the time to act as a step-down transformer?
That's the key.
Are you wrapping those ideas in a relatable story so they can actually plug into it, drop their defenses, and understand?
It is the fundamental difference between demanding rigid compliance and actually transmitting genuine understanding.
We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. But the core takeaway is beautifully simple and highly practical.
It really is.
The next time you encounter a minor glitch in the matrix of your daily life, an unfolded shirt, a misplaced fork, a totally chaotic workflow from a coworker, do not just immediately see a lack of discipline.
Look deeper.
See the cosmic engine of yin and yang at work. See the absolute necessity of relational gravity holding your orbit together. Recognize the beautiful, essential, universe-saving tension between the transmitter and the dissipator.
This really raises an important question for anyone listening.
Oh, definitely.
Are you acting as the transmitter or the dissipator in your current situation?
Yeah.
And more importantly, how can you actively appreciate the opposite force as a structural necessity rather than fighting it as a personal insult?
It really reframes everything from a domestic annoyance into a cosmic necessity. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over on your own.
I love this part.
Earlier, we talked about how a star is a delicate, eternal balance between the inward pull of gravity and the outward explosion of fusion. But what happens when that tension finally breaks? If the tension between the transmitter and the dissipator is what keeps the system alive, what happens when that relationship inevitably fails? Does the relationship simply collapse into a black hole of resentment? Or, just like a dying star going supernova, is that exact painful moment of failure the only possible way for entirely new, heavier elements of your personality to finally be forged?